Yeah, so Pacman put out this little short video on Twitter. I think he probably put it out on TikTok too and YouTube Shorts. Trying to smear Marianne Williamson and go after her, paint her as unserious and kooky, just like the mainstream media is. And this tweet was not well received, not just by people in the Vanguard community, but in general. You know, it got a measly 63 likes. And almost all of the comments are negative, right? Basically, everyone is like, you're smearing her, you're discrediting her, et cetera, et cetera. Almost everyone. I don't almost don't see a single response to this that was like positive, signing on to his sentiment here. So seemingly, this is a universally negatively received piece of commentary from David Pakman, who at this point is literally MSNBC light. Someone in the comments was like, David Pakman makes Sam Cedar look like an anarchist, which I think is 100% accurate. He really is just kind of a centrist Democrat tool at this point.
Who we gave credit to, by the way, when he went on the Patrick Bateman podcast or whatever the fuck that podcast was called.
Oh yeah, when he was on the PBD podcast, I thought he did a pretty good job. But almost, I mean, that's a low bar. If you're sitting next to Patrick Bet David, it's not hard to look impressive. If you're just like, I think that the government should pay for welfare programs, then you're gonna look good.
That's another indictment of when you know who was on the podcast, because oh boy.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, let's take a look here at this little shitty video Pacman dropped. And then I can, tell you guys the way I responded to this, and also show you guys the ratio that we inflicted on this motherfucker. Just a brutal ratio. But that's not really, I mean, we've been ratioed on Twitter too. It's not really that important. Just, kind of a little feather in the cap for the Vanguard boys. But yeah, let's take a look here.
What are you talking about? We've got the Floyd Mayweather 51 wins, no scratches. Come on now, Gavin.
All right, let's take a look.
People just haven't caught up to our great takes yet.
Exactly.
She's promoted this prosperity gospel stuff that you often hear from the Christian preachers. You can look at her 2012 book for examples of that. She sounds like Deepak Chopra half the time, with these unintelligible quotes that are sort of like meant to sound profound, but they don't really mean anything. Just one example is when she said, "Everyone feels on some level like an alien in this world because we are. We come from another realm of consciousness and long for home." Oh, wow. That just as easily could be a Deepak Chopra quote. Another example: yin is feminine earth, yang is masculine sky. When God is seen as he, the soul is seen as she. Just archetypes. Spirit impregnates soul. It's just not for me.
Anyway,
it doesn't have to be for you. That has absolutely nothing to do with her politics, other than it informs the fact that she's a kind and compassionate, thoughtful person.
Exactly. I think Marianne Williamson's spirituality, whether you love it or hate it, is kind of besides the point in this conversation, right? I happen to like the fact that she brings the spiritual element to the table. I'm a secular dude for the most part. I'm not someone that really considers myself religious, but I do kind of get into some of the spiritual stuff. I practice transcendental meditation, for example. David Lynch is one of my favorite kind of spiritual leaders and filmmakers, obviously. So I kind of enjoy that world of new age mysticism and stuff. Despite the fact that, again, I'm a mostly secular person. So I enjoy Marianne's spirituality. I think a lot of what she has to say is pretty valuable in that regard. And it's an element that she brings to the table that a candidate like Bernie Sanders, for example, just does not. She's kind of appealing to a whole different world than what he's able to connect with against someone like Bernie Sanders. But again, it's kind of irrelevant in this conversation, if you ask me, because she's not running on the fucking yin and the yang of Mother Earth and nature and the sky. Like, that's not what her platform is. She's running on issues like Medicare for all. She's running on a very Bernie Sanders-esque platform of economic populism. So to kind of just ignore all that, not even bring up the policy differentiation between herself and Biden, and just focus on some tweets from 15 years ago that you think makes her look kooky or crazy or whatever, it just comes off as very lazy to me. And it does come off like a smear because, again, she's not running on a platform of yin is feminine, earth is masculine. Like, that's not her fucking campaign slogan. This is a tweet you found from 2009. What is this? What is the relevance of this to the conversation?
Yeah, well, obviously it had the intended result of, or he was intentionally trying to portray her as unserious, right? Because of her, religious or spiritual beliefs. And, I'm probably far less spiritual even than you, Gavin. Like, I do not believe in any of this shit. I could never transcendental meditate. Like, I would be like, come on, like, it's not where it's not like, I can't get there. Like, it's not for me. I don't have a problem with anybody that does it, but I'm like I'm like hard agnostic. And that was like my last conversion from being like I'm an atheist, fight me. Like, I'm just like, whatever. Like, I don't care about any of this shit anymore is how I feel. But so I'm in a position to be like, I don't think a regular voter is going to be too put off by this actually. And I think when Glenn, replied to our tweet and he said that she was grappling with some of the more profound, he says those quotes aren't remotely kooky, they're reflections of somebody engaging in the vast mysteries of life via spirituality and transcendence. God, Glenn has a way with words. But to utterly conventional midwits serving as normalcy enforcers at David Pakman show, anything beyond NYT op-ed page direct seems crazy. Absolutely great way of explaining it from Glenn. I was so happy that he chimed in. I thought that this is so true. Even as somebody who, again, I am fucking far from spiritual, religious, any of that shit. I don't care about it. I don't seek it out. Like, a couple of people in the chat are like, you haven't read any of her books? I never read any of Bernie Sanders' books either. Leave me alone. You know what I mean? I'm not going to now. It's just, I think that she is trying to grapple with some of those broader concepts about life. And I think that is in a lot of ways reassuring to me. And maybe she goes in a different direction than I do, right? Like, I try and look inward. I try and think about like, okay, what's my reaction to my community? Like, how am I, like, my space here? How am I changing the world for the better? All these kinds of things that we all think about as like vast human beings, capable of deep consciousness and all of that. She was just being open and vulnerable with it about it. And that was her fucking job. She was going around moving people, inspiring people, helping people change their lives, right? Like, we had Max Collins on the show, was talking about how he was going to see her all the time during the early stages of his recovery because she was helping him when he was, getting a hold of his alcohol addiction, right? And finding sobriety. This is a woman that, has dedicated her life to service in a lot of ways. And you know what? She also sold a fuck ton of books, but this is kind of like a Bernie Sanders had two houses argument. It's like, yeah, she became massively popular selling her book. She wasn't exploiting people. She was going around and spreading a message, right? It's no different than, if somebody had been, an actual, like, legitimate, like, any other religion, right? I don't know exactly what a religion is. I know she grew up Jewish, but I don't think that's necessarily the correct reflection of her faith. But either way, you wouldn't, like, any kind of, like, Islam or Abrahamic religion or whatever, you know what I mean, would be never allowed to be besmirched like this.
Exactly. It's pretty insane. And yeah, so the tweet I responded to David with said, wow, you found 2 tweets from 15 years ago to try to make her look kooky and didn't address any of the policy substance she brings to the table. Good job, David, being literally MSNBC light. And, a lot of people throw around that term MSNBC light pretty freely.
We're MSNBC light.
Right. But David is literally MSNBC light. And this is just more proof of that because the attack he's going with on Marianne is exactly the one that people on MSNBC are going with as well, and people in the mainstream liberal press at large. We've showed you guys a couple examples already on this podcast of news segments where they totally ignore Marianne's progressive platform. They totally ignore her Bernie Sanders-esque economic populism and choose to focus solely on a few kind of kooky spiritual statements she made 10 years ago, or, something she said that about her spirituality that, might seem a little bit kooky to someone who's an atheist or someone who's not on the same page as her in that regard. But again, just totally ignoring the actual policy substance she brings to the table in favor of trying to paint her as a crazy person, trying to paint her as some woo-woo crystal lady. Same shit they did to Jill Stein, by the way. But yeah, so FYI, totally ratioed David Pakman. This tweet kind of blew up. I wasn't expecting it to. It got 518 likes to Pakman's just completely pathetic 63 likes. So again, this was not
over 108,000 people saw that and decided to pass on giving it the bump.
Yeah, that's crazy. This video got 20,000 views and 108 1,000 views on the tweet itself, and 63 of those people were like, I approve this message.
Oof. And it's because who was in our chat? Let me throw this up because Wolverine Warren, he's become so smug. The Marianne shit is just lazy because he doesn't have a substantive way to defend Biden. Absolutely. There is no substantive way to defend Biden, right? That's why Gavin and I are supporting challengers from the left. Come one, come all, challengers on the left. I'm waiting for the next one to step up to the bat.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's the other annoying thing about this. It's like, if you want to be a Biden bro and just come out here and be a loyal foot soldier and propagandist for the Democratic Party, okay, do that. It's your right to do. If that's how you feel, if those are your politics, then play that role by all means. It's your prerogative, David Pakman. But don't fucking cosplay as a progressive, which he continues to do, and pretend like you're someone who's to the left of Joe Biden. And then as soon as a legitimate progressive with an economically populist platform comes out to challenge him from the left in the primary, your first move, your first instinct is immediately to come out here, run defense for Biden, and smear the progressive who, by every conceivable metric, is to his left. Again, I think there's legitimate criticisms of Marianne Williamson. I'm not in 100% agreement with Marianne on every single one of her policy positions. We've hashed that out on the show in person with Marianne. But by every single conceivable metric, policy by policy by policy, she is more progressive than Joe Biden. She is further to the left on every issue, socially, economically, etc., from a foreign policy perspective as well, than Joe Biden. So again, if you just want to be Team Biden, Mr. Biden bro, MSNBC light Democratic foot soldier, go ahead, do it. But don't fucking pretend to be a progressive if this is how you're going to treat actual progressives challenging the neoliberal status quo of Joe Biden.
Yeah, but have you checked out his most recent cryptocurrency, Gavin? I hear it's the investment of the future. Also, I just want to say, for this massive level of cope over here, this is very much true. Biden is the least offensive president of the last 5. You can cry about it.
Yeah.
That doesn't make him good, but
yeah. Anyway, Pacman also tweeted, let me find it real quick, because after my tweet kind of started gaining some traction and wickedly ratioed the motherfucker, I think he got salty and tweeted this out. He says, I'm getting the sense that some of the, this is just epic levels of cope as well. I'm getting the sense that some of the 2020 Tulsi energy has shifted to move behind Marianne Williamson now that Tulsi is an anti-woke Republican. So he saw a bunch of people, legitimate progressives like Zach and I, pointing out that he was basically smearing Marianne Williamson. So his first move, instead of responding with any substance whatsoever, is just to try to tie Marianne Williamson to Tulsi Gabbard, someone who obviously Zach and I agree is completely cringe, a complete and utter sellout. But as I said here, what the fuck does Tulsi Gabbard have to do with any of this? What does she have to do with any of this? Why are you bringing Tulsi Gabbard into the picture in order to further smear Marianne Williamson? People support Marianne Williamson because she's running as a progressive on a Bernie Sanders-esque platform and is actually challenging the neoliberal status quo as represented by Joe Biden. And I just don't even think Pacman's tweet is accurate at all. What Tulsi energy has shifted behind Marianne? The biggest Tulsi Gabbard supporters that come to my mind are like people like Jimmy Dore and folks like them. They're not even on board with Marianne Williamson. The Tulsi Gabbard crowd is basically now just on the right wing. They're not supporting Marianne Williamson. What the fuck are you talking about?
Oh yeah, there's actually, in fact, the people who were once Tulsi supporters, I think, are probably some of the most vitriolic people on the internet towards Marianne Williamson, which shows that this is just an empty attack. It just shows that he's trying to connect her to somebody his audience already has like a skepticism of and a disapproval of, right? This is just basically throwing mud at Marianne Williamson over here, trying to portray her as somebody she's very much not. And you can have substantive criticisms of Marianne Williamson. That's totally fine. If he were out here talking about how he's deeply uncomfortable with her comments on the Russia conflict in Ukraine, and talking about how he doesn't think that she would be a good fit for the president, and for some reason he thinks that Joe Biden is going to be less hawkish on Ukraine than Marianne Williamson would be, right? I would dispute that, but he would be free to come out here and make that analogy. But this is just completely without substance, right? This is just guilt by association with somebody you haven't even associated with.
That's 100% correct, Zach. That's a great way to put it. Trying to do guilt by association with someone that Marianne doesn't even associate with, has not associated with. It's not like they're homies. I never see them cross-pollinating in their respective media spheres at all. Tulsi Gabbard is a total sellout, a total shill, a literal bobblehead on Fox News that, by the way, endorsed Joe Biden and now calls him Hitler on Fox, which is hilarious. But yeah, so just another completely empty and pathetic, desperate attempt to smear Marianne Williamson from David Pakman. Again, there are valid criticisms to make of Marianne. Why aren't you making those criticisms? We could have a substantive discussion here. But if you're just going to ignore all of the actual policies that she's bringing to the table and go with these pathetic, desperate smears, then I don't know what you're expecting people to respond with, David. And speaking of responses, we got some pretty good responses to our tweet. I'll throw this up here. Folks like Brianna Joy Gray chimed in, made a lot of good points. Seems like most people are on the same page as Zach and I. I don't know where Brianna's response is. Let me find that. But here's a Mac from Good Politic Guy, good friend of the show. He says, yeah, it's wild to cut a video like that without even mentioning a single policy or even anything she said the last couple of years. Again, those tweets that that David used were from like 2012 and 2009. Did you see Mac's response, Zach?
Oh yeah, I went through our thread before the show. I thought that was a good point, right?
Absolutely. But yeah, got a lot of good responses to this tweet. It seems like most people are, even people that aren't necessarily 100% on board with Marianne Williamson, seem to agree that Pakman's attack on her was totally lazy. I think Brian in chat basically just said that too. So yeah, basically unanimous negativity towards David Pakman for this, but it does seem that he responded to some of this on his live stream from yesterday. If you want to take a look, Zach, and react to this could be pretty funny.
Absolutely. It's gonna be like when Vosh reacted to us, but different. And I think he's gonna go with the fact that we're like Tulsi stans and we just are like Jimmy Dore leftists that just want to create problems on the left. But who knows? Maybe he'll give us less credit than that.
Even though that's so far from the truth. If that is in fact the line of attack he goes with, that's pathetic, because we haven't been pro Jimmy Dore or Tulsi Gabbard on this channel at all for like years.
People say go for it. Okay, here's what's going on. Marianne Williamson is running for the Democratic nomination. She's challenging Joe Biden. Now, if Joe Biden runs, there's not going to be a serious primary. There aren't going to be debates, and Marianne Williamson will accomplish nothing. Okay? There are people, 3 people wrote to me and said, David, Marianne Williamson.
I sure love the will of the people. That's what makes our country great. Listen to this guy. He sounds like he hates democracy right here. There will be no challenge. There will be no debate. We will coronate this man. Yeah, that doesn't sound like something I would sign up for as a progressive, or sign off on, rather, excuse me.
Right.
Okay. There are people, 3 people wrote to me and said, David, Marianne Williamson will push Biden left. No, she won't, because she won't even get on a stage with Joe Biden. If Biden doesn't run and there's like a broad primary, she also has no chance. Okay. But fine, whatever. For me, I look at Marianne Williamson and I go, okay, does she have any experience? No. Does she have any expertise? No. Does she have any community that would allow her to get things done if she somehow became president? No.
Okay, well, that's completely unfair to say, because she could easily build that community or movement behind her in the process of running for president. And as far as the whole experience, she doesn't have any experience. Well, neither have, all the presidents in my lifetime have had that experience that you claim to care so much about, David. I mean, Joe Biden had that experience. Obama was a senator. He had that experience. Except for Donald Trump, all the presidents that have been elected in my lifetime have had that experience. And what have they accomplished? What progressive policies did they get passed? I think in many ways, the American people want an outsider, someone who's not steeped in the swamp water of Washington, D.C. And I think it's foolish and elitist, frankly, to say that only someone who has spent their entire life in the swamp can effectively make change, can effectively, get progressive priorities accomplished when in office.
Yep. Well, let's get to the meat and potatoes. I'm excited to see what he has to say about us.
It's sort of like you might go to someone for Reiki, which I don't. I think Reiki is nonsense. But you might go to someone for Reiki and they might want Medicare for all. But that doesn't mean you make them president. And it doesn't mean that if they become president, they'll be able to get Medicare for all done, right? Yes, Marianne Williamson has good views about climate change. But you can also go to an acupuncturist who might have good views about climate change. It doesn't mean you make them the president of the United States. So Glenn Greenwald responds to my clip about it, where I read some quotes from Marianne Williamson. And he says, those quotes aren't remotely cool.
Also, is he just going to completely ignore our actual tweet and just focus on Glenn Greenwald because his audience probably hates Glenn?
Probably, but let's see.
Come on, bro. Are you afraid of us, David? Come on.
They're reflective of someone engaging the vast mysteries of life via spirituality and transcendence. But to utterly conventional midwits serving as normalcy enforcers, David Pakman show, anything beyond New York Times op-ed page dreck seems crazy. Then Brianna Joy Gray weighed in and said, Biden guy wants to vote for Biden again. This is why that part of the left is dead. That part of the left. What the part that only ever is the one that wins anything and is the only one that gets anything done.
Wait, can we pause it?
Which is
this guy just told you what, like 3 minutes ago, that it was going to be Joe Biden on the running for re-election, and that if he was going to run for re-election, which we're pretty sure he is, then there was going to be no debates, there was going to be no challenge, and there was going to be a coronation. Okay, how is that the side that's accomplishing things for the left? I'm just curious. How is getting behind Joe Biden for another meaningless 4 fucking years while he continues to poorly manage this country and middle Americans suffer and our climate suffers and people die without health insurance? How's that winning? How's that working out for you? You're the side that gets stuff? No, you're the side that gets stuffed.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the part that's not dead that Brianna is referring to. So, listen, I defend Marianne Williamson's right to run. I support her and anyone who wants to run running. This is the American way. My opinion is that she's not interesting. My opinion is she won't push Biden left. My opinion is I don't want someone with no experience or expertise of any kind in any way related to the way politics works being the nominee or president. That's not interesting to me. So sue me.
What is interesting to you, David?
Okay.
What is interesting?
Listen,
Joe
these
Biden
are
being carried.
I don't know about
election.
Brianna Joy Gray. I'm not familiar with her really, but Glenn Greenwald was one of the Toolsies in 2020. And I'm seeing now that the Toolsies have been completely humiliated because Toolsy was sort of like this pseudo anti-wokeist, anti-vax, right, libertarian, populist rhetoric, word salad type person. She was never on the left the way some people said she was kind of the last true leftist. A lot of the Toolsies have been humiliated because of what happened with her. And I'm seeing a little bit of the Toolsy energy shift and get behind Marianne Williamson. And I'll be quite honest with all of you guys. It's all a complete and total joke. A complete and total joke. So have at it. Let's have a competition. Allow the marketplace of ideas to get Marianne Williamson as much support as she's able to get. I defend her right to run. Not interesting to me. Campaign going nowhere. Have fun. Okay. Everybody have fun.
All right.
All
So
right,
I got to, go ahead,
No,
Gavin.
you're good.
I was just going to say, I have to stand corrected really quick. He supports her right to run. He's just actively excited about participating in the media blackout and contributing to all of the framework that makes us have a less democratic system. Gotcha. My bad. My mistake, David. In rhetoric only, you support this woman's right to run. In practice, you're going to go ahead and drag her name through the mud just because you want to make Biden content because it's more clickable for you.
Yep. And also super disappointing that he chose to just focus on Glenn Greenwald's response and not our actual tweet, which got way more likes than Glenn's response and obviously way more likes than Pacman's original video. That goes without saying. But I mean, that was the sentiment you should have been reacting to. I think he chose to focus on Glenn Greenwald because, like you said, he views Glenn as a Tulsi supporter, and he can use that to make the argument that, oh, Marianne Williamson's just the new Tulsi Gabbard, and actually all of her supporters are secret right wingers, et cetera, et cetera. So super fucking lazy on David's part. Again, there is literally no connection between Marianne Williamson and Tulsi Gabbard. There's no legitimate association you can make with those two. You're just trying to smear her. And also, yeah, it's fair to say that Marianne faces an uphill battle against Joe Biden. It's definitely fair to point that out. That's always been a part of our commentary as it relates to this subject matter, as it relates to a primary challenge to Biden from anyone, whether they're established in politics or an outsider like Marianne Williamson. But the fact of the matter is that Biden needs to be challenged. The left only has every 4 to 8 years to mount a presidential challenge. And just because there's an incumbent primary or just because there's an incumbent president doesn't mean we shouldn't engage in that primary process. Now, David, if you think that Marianne Williamson isn't the right progressive to mount that challenge because she's too spiritual for you, and 15 years ago she tweeted something that you thought was cringy, well, then why aren't you pressuring what are, in your view, actual progressives to step up to the fucking plate? Because right now, Marianne Williamson is showing way more balls and way more gumption than any of the elected squad members, for example. Obviously, Bernie Sanders himself included in that. They're not challenging Joe Biden. They're endorsing him for re-election. People like Pramila Jayapal just said we should re-elect Joe Biden. So if you're actually a progressive and not just a total cosplaying, Biden foot soldier that pretends to be progressive, then you should be trying to get someone who, like I said, in your view, actually is on the left, someone who's more qualified than Marianne Williamson to step up to the plate. But if we both agree that Biden should be challenged and that neoliberalism has to go, and that the left, economic populists and progressives need to take back over the Democratic Party and win the presidency, then you should be welcoming Marianne Williamson's challenge to Biden and using your platform to help her with that uphill battle, an uphill battle that we both acknowledge she is engaging in.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't mean to. I don't think I ever have. But there's, Gavin and I are sitting here telling you, like, oh, Marianne Williamson's going to be president. No, okay. And I disagree with her on a lot of things. We talked to her about some of them the last time that she was on here, but it's just indisputable. There is no discussion. She is dramatically to the left of Joe Biden on basically every metric. Okay, so that's how I'm doing my math on this one.
Exactly. And from a progressive perspective, the status quo as represented by Joe Biden is unacceptable. It is unacceptable. So again, if you're going to be a proud Biden foot soldier and someone that thinks the status quo as represented by the neoliberalism of Joe Biden and his administration, if you think that's acceptable, then that's fine. You can just come out here and admit that, and admit that you pander to MSNBC viewers for money. If those are your politics, then that's whatever. Embrace it. But don't pretend to be a fucking progressive. Don't pretend to be a progressive and meanwhile sit here and tell us to just continually stomach the neoliberalism of Joe Biden that very well could lead to 4 more years of Donald Trump / Ron DeSantis if progressives don't get their shit together and mount a serious challenge. And again, right now, the only person that's willing to do that is Marianne Williamson. So if you don't think that she's good enough, then start pressuring fucking AOC to do it, or Nina Turner to do it, or whoever the fuck you think is more qualified, David Pakman. But just sitting here shitting all over Marianne Williamson, bringing up her tweets from 15 years ago and trying to paint her as some spiritual crystal lady, just like MSNBC does, makes you a Biden propagandist.